A beautiful introduction, Father Lucas. I don't think anybody has introduced me so beautifully. We simply had a conversation earlier, and he inputted so many little bits of information that I didn't even realize I had said. So thank you. And also, I'm blessed and humbled to be here today because I've heard about the fathers here through my interactions with students. And today I've had the privilege and honor of meeting them, and I'm truly humbled. So thank you for inviting me, and I hope today's session will be fruitful. I hope that everyone here will be enlightened, and so that we can take forward our work to the community and uplift the youth. I often wonder why God has bigger plans. I often wonder why God makes our paths cross. And today I had a light bulb moment when I was discussing downstairs. I realized that we are all connected with our desire to help, our desire to ease the suffering of other people. I call it my ikigai, my passion for life. I often wonder why I came from so far, from London, to come to Assam, of all places. And as I've grown older and older, and now in my 5th decade of life, I've realized that my calling was always with the youth and their upliftment. Hence, this is what's brought me here today, to empower youth workers like yourselves and those people who are associated with the youth, so that we can further our journey and uplift the community as a whole. So today my topic is choose life, not drugs. I'm going to just give you a very brief outline of what I'm going to cover before I do. I'm going to start with the basics, because I have done a little research on this, and I think that before I tell you about the intricacies, because drugs is a very complicated issue and it's quite complex, so I need to start with the basics. I'm going to be starting with the very basics, so as we work through the presentation, everything will make sense to you later on. I'm going to start talking about drugs, basically. Very, very briefly, I'm going to classify them in your mind, so that when we talk about precursors, or we talk about opioids, or we talk about opiates, you know exactly what we're referring to. So we will cover the basics first. After that, I'm going to take it into a bigger scenario. We'll talk about the world, then we'll talk about India, and then we'll talk about the Northeast, the influence of drugs in all of these places. And then I want to talk about the people, the addicts. Why do they start? What are the stages of addiction? Identifying those most at risk. There is a very classic assessment, which I will also cover today, called the CAGE assessment. It is a basic assessment that is done to understand how much at risk certain individuals may be. And then we will go on to the main crux of today's session, which is how to help the youths at risk. How can we help them? There are 3 ways. We are going to cover all 3: intervention, prevention, and building resilience. This is where we come in. We may not have the expertise to know about the technicalities of rehabilitation, but we have love, we have support, we have encouragement. And this is where our contribution is so immense to the society, and I hope I'll be able to highlight that during the course of today's presentation. All right, I hope you're all ready. I'm going to start, and I'm going to start with a confession. And I'm going to actually start walking a little bit amongst you all, but I'm going to start with a confession. My confession is this. My 2nd book, which I'm writing, is about a drug addict. I'm in the process of writing it, and I've never ever read it out to anyone. But I'm going to read you out the preface today. Just a few lines. I want to read it out to you, and you are the first people to hear it. As you know, a book writing is very personal. It's a personal journey. But I feel that I want to share it with you. I want to share my thoughts with you so that you will understand how it is for an addict. So my preface goes like this. Before I read it out, I'm just going to tell you what happens. The story that I'm writing on is about a drug addict who went into drugs very early. He was born and brought up in Shillong, and he entered this world of narcotics at the age of 16. And he entered because he met a boy who was much older to him. But because this boy had lost his father, this older boy became like a father figure. So whatever the older boy did, the younger boy did as well. Everything he did, he followed. It was a great influence. Unfortunately, the older boy was actually an addict. And so it didn't take long till the younger one, his name is Seju, until he actually took drugs as well. I want to tell you the first time how he took drugs. And this is how my preface, my book starts. I'm just going to read it to you. As I said, it's never been read out before. This is the first time. So I hope that it's just a very short introduction. So basically, this boy, Seju, walks into the room of his friend, his older friend, and his friend is having a bath, and he comes out of the bathroom. And in the meantime, this boy, Seju, has been rummaging through his bag. He carries this blue bag, cloth bag, and when he opens the bag, he sees that there is a spoon. There is a white powder. And he realizes that his friend has been on heroin for a long time. And this is where we pick up the story. So the boy, the older boy comes out from the bathroom, and he sees Seju, and he says, "Come on, man, cool down. It's something new. You'll enjoy it." Seju shakes his head vigorously. "No way, Atanu, no way. Why didn't you tell me you were on this stuff?" A deep sense of betrayal makes his voice crack. "Ah, you're a baby, Seju. You're a baby," he says cooingly, smoothing down his hair. "But today you can do your honors. Today, it's a brand new high. You have to try it once." Atanu has been a father figure to him since his father died just a few years ago. They have developed a close friendship. And Atanu is smooth in his actions. He doesn't waste any time. He brings over a glass and a bottle. And where Seju is sitting, he sits on the edge of the bed. He pours a little water in the glass. Seju is silent. He knows what's going to happen. So deep is his concentration. "Give me the spoon. Watch what I'm doing." Atanu opens the drawer under the table and takes out a small square of folded paper from amongst a mess of scrunched up papers. He carefully unfolds it to reveal a white powder lying along the folds. He reaches for a razor blade lying on the windowsill and starts to cut the powder with the blade like a Chinese chef with a meat cleaver. This is the stuff of dreams. It takes you wherever you have been. The process is meticulous. Seju is watching, dumbstruck. He doesn't even realize his mouth has fallen open. Atanu lifts a tiny amount of powder using the corner of the blade, which he tips cleanly onto the spoon. Picking up the syringe, he dips the needle into the glass, draws out some water, and squirts it onto the spoon. The powder disperses over the small pool of water. He stirs the water with the needle until it becomes a translucent solution. With steady hands, he draws every drop into the syringe. Seju's lips are drying up and crinkling at the edges. His bare blinking eyes have spiders of bloodshot. "It's loaded," says Atanu. "Give me your arm." No way, says Seju. "Shh, nothing will happen. Don't worry. Don't you trust me? Don't you trust me? You are my true friend. And if you are my true friend, you will trust me." And of course, Seju melts. His voice is cajoling but firm, his eyes beckoning. Seju knows that he will not be able to refuse him. "Now?" "Yes," Seju says. "Now. No point like the present." "Where are you going to shoot?" Seju asks. He's getting nervous. Seju has agreed. "Right here, on the table." "Hurry up, I'm dying for my fix too." Seju raises his right arm and places it elbow down in front of his friend. Atanu ties the stained handkerchief tightly around the bicep. "Make a fist," he orders, demonstrating with his own clenched fist. Seju meekly complies. A blue vein immediately bulges out on the inside of his arm. Seju looks the other way. His face creases. Atanu angles the needle and pushes it gently into the pulsating vein. The soft skin pierces, and red dark blood enters the needle. We've hit, and all we need to do now is shoot. Apart from the tiny pinprick, there is no pain. Seju is surprised. He looks at the needle. Atanu is slowly depressing the entire contents of the syringe into Seju's body. He takes out the needle. "Welcome to the bonny homes of YAR," he yells. Seju recognizes the words from his favorite Wordsworth poem and manages a slight smile, but a wave of heat has immediately begun to grow over his ears, now spreading into his head. "Are you feeling all right, Seju?" he asks. "Lie on the bed." Atanu takes him to the bed. Seju walks groggily. "My ears feel hot. My ears are tingling. There's a funny taste in my mouth, like a metallic taste." He scratches his ears, scratches his head. Atanu giggles at his symptoms. He's acting like a clown. "It's all a part of it. Stop asking questions. Enjoy the high." Atanu goes over to the table, cuts the powder once again. Seju relaxes his body to absorb it. Every raw sensation. He closes his eyes. He feels like he is floating on a helium-filled balloon. His mind having left reality at the ground level. He has done it. His first fix. He's only 16 years old. And that's how the book starts. So without further ado, I'd like to go on to the presentation. Can you hear me? So let's start. Let's start with the very basics. What is a drug? A drug is basically a chemical substance that changes how your body and mind work. They can include prescription medicines, but in this context, we are talking about legal drugs, things that are illicit. So a psychoactive drug is the area that we are concerned with today. A drug or any substance that affects how the brain works and causes changes in mood, awareness, thoughts, feelings, or behavior. And this is our focus area today. So, let me just start. I'm going to keep it very, very basic because there are different classifications have different categories. I want to keep it as simple as possible so that you will know it at the tips of your fingers. You don't have to look at anything. You'll simply know which category it falls in simply by the effect that it has on the body. So there are four main classification areas. We have stimulants, depressants, opioids, and hallucinogens. Let me quickly tell you before I go into detail. We're going to cover the opioids first because this is where they're all derived from the poppy plant, or known as opium. And opium can be used in two different ways. It can be used synthetically, which is known as opioids, and it can be used non-synthetically, which is known as opiates. Opiates, such as morphine, go on to give heroin. I'll tell you how it happens. And non-synthetic, they are called opioids, and they will also be going on to make things like methadone and different kinds of drugs. But the parent drug, the parent is opium, or the poppy plant. And let's start with each of these categories very quickly. All right, let's start with opioids first. Opioids are pain relieving, okay? So all of these are pain relieving opioids. They create euphoria. They create drowsiness. These opioids are very relaxing, have well-being, have pain relief. Mostly they're pain relief. So remember now, opioids are pain relief, okay? And they fall under, they're narcotics, which means they're derived from the poppy plant. They may cause all of these symptoms, and these are the names. This is called the drug wheel, so I've just taken out the opioids. Right, all of these are derived from opium, which comes from the poppy plant. A pretty plant, and how deceiving it is, how deceiving it is. Right, so opioids and opioids. Opiates and opioids are made differently. This is why they're known by different names. Opiates are extracted from the natural plant matter, so they're organic. Opioids are organic, things like heroin are water soluble. Okay, so they're organic. They don't really have that much processing. So these are the examples of opiates. Opium, morphine, codeine, and heroin. All of these are naturally. They are opiates. They are made from the natural plant matter. Opioids, however, are made in the lab. They are synthesized, and they will often use a opiate. They will add synthetic materials to come with any of these, methadone and so forth. But they're all under the same category. So let's just have a little more look at the opiates. This is where heroin comes under. Can you see the poppy plant there? This is the unripe poppy. And can you see the sap here? This is the opium. So morphine is actually made directly from opium.
And heroin is made from morphine. All they do is they add something called acetic anhydride. They boil it up for 30 minutes, and there you go. You have heroin. Okay. Now the acetic anhydride is known as a precursor. These precursors actually come from a different part of India, which I will explain a little bit later. So this is a non-synthetic narcotic with a high potential for abuse, and it is derived from opium. Okay. And most of you will know and have heard of morphine because it's a pain-relieving drug used for centuries. So codeine, as you know, is also non-synthetic. It is present in opium and is prepared from morphine. Again, this is used in cough suppressant. Very often in many medications, codeine-based. This is for coughing. Anybody who's got coughs will be having medication, which actually consists or comprised of codeine. When you have an excess of acetic anhydride, as I said, it is added to the morphine, and it is heated for 30 minutes. Hey presto, you then have heroin. That is how it's produced. And yes, it is an opiate, which means that it is non-synthetic. I hope all this is making sense, but there's going to be a little quiz afterwards just to see if you remember. Because without knowing the basics, we will not be able to. The other things won't make sense. Everything else will fall into place. Let's move on. A little bit about heroin, because it is one of the most common street drugs and the most potent as well. It is water soluble. As you know, it's about 35% pure. It's injected under the skin. The high is accompanied by drowsiness and a feeling of well-being, which usually lasts for about 3 to 4 hours, and regular use does lead to physical independence. Right, here we go again. Opiates, naturally derived. Opioids are synthetic. I think that makes sense to all of you, but normally people call them as opioids as a general group. Okay, this is a general terminology. Let's have a quick word on opioids. Opioids are synthetic opiates. Does that make sense? You added something else to it. They're not derived, therefore, directly from opium, but they have the same physiological effects as opium narcotics. Narcotics means drugs. So if we just have a look here, when you have opiates, they're a separate category, but when you add them with synthetic opiates plus synthetic opiates, gives you opioids. All right, these are all synthetic names. These are all non-synthetic. Everyone with me? Right, we've done opioids, so that was that. And then now let's move on to the next one. The next one is stimulants. Now, stimulants, as the name suggests, stimulate the central nervous system. They make you more excited. They make you more euphoric. They increase your confidence levels. They give you a rapid heartbeat. And all of these they will give you. And they basically make you more talkative and overconfident. So anybody who's shy and suddenly appears to be overconfident, talking a lot, it could be that they may have been taking something along the lines of stimulants. And here are some of the examples. Now, the most common would be betel nut, caffeine, and nicotine. Yeah, these are the most common. Nicotine obviously is in cigarettes, caffeine in coffee and herbal teas, all kinds of teas. And of course, we have betel nut, which does make your head go a little round and round. Now remember, all of these have different potencies. Some are not that potent and used culturally. Funnily enough, bhang is legal in India. I will be telling you about this in a moment. Bhang is legal, but marijuana, which is a more refined version, is not, and neither is ganja, which is cannabis, which is not legal. But I will go into this a little later on because I want to cover the basics first. So, whilst we may be taking on nicotine and caffeine, and remember the potency of them is not as much as, say, cocaine or amphetamines. They are a lot more potent. So the effect on the human body is different. But nevertheless, stimulants stimulate the central nervous system. They're known as uppers, okay? In regular parlance, it's known as uppers because they speed up the process, the operations of the central nervous system, and increases the heartbeat and the blood pressure. So therefore, these in excess or overdose can actually harm you, even give you a stroke or a heart attack. Temporarily increases alertness and energy. They are highly addictive stimulants because the high is so quick and therefore they are highly addictive. And the most commonly used street drugs that fall into the stimulant category are cocaine, nicotine, ecstasy, amphetamines, methamphetamines, crystal meth, nicotine, and caffeine. They're all known as different names. Crystal meth is known as ice. Okay, so many, many different names. Smack, ice, Big H, all different names. But those are the street names. These are the most commonly used stimulants. Right, we've done stimulants. Let's move on to depressants. Now, depressants are the opposite of stimulants. So stimulants make you go up and give you, they're called uppers. And depressants are called downers, all right? So let's just have a look. Depressants relax you. They give you a sense of drowsiness. Again, let's go to the drug wheel. You're less inhibited, so you will have a sense of euphoria. You will feel relaxed. You will feel calm. And alcohol is depressing. Your speech slurs. You speak a little slower. You know, you feel a little more relaxed when you're drunk, I guess. Remember, some of the drugs actually fall into two categories. So therefore, like for example, cannabis is often known as cannabinoids, known as cannabinoids. So they are actually stimulants as well as depressants, as well as hallucinogens. So therefore, they're in their own category. So different classifications have different classifications. You know, they're in different categories. So depending on, I've done a lot of research on it, and I felt the easiest way was to do it, just bring it down to 4. Okay, it just seems much more easy. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. This is depressants. As I said, they're known as downers, and they slow down the operations of the central nervous system. They cause a person to feel calm, less inhibited, more relaxed. And the most addictive drugs, they're highly dangerous, again, likely to cause overdose. And the most commonly used are alcohol, barbiturates, cannabis, and marijuana. Cannabis and marijuana are actually related. Cannabis is the genus of flowering plant, and marijuana are the dried leaves of the cannabis plant. But I'll tell you about that. Oh, I think I can tell you now. I think I've done it. Yes. A quick word on cannabis and marijuana. I just want to tell you the difference so that you know at an instant what the difference are. Marijuana can also act as a depressant. It can also act as a stimulant and a hallucinogen. So cannabinoids are often in their own category as well. If you do Google it, you'll find a new category as that. So I'm not putting it, I'm keeping it in the same one. I'm keeping it under depressants. Cannabis is the genus of the flowering plant, and marijuana refers to the dried leaves, flowers, stems, and seeds from the Latin name Cannabis sativa or Cannabis indica plant. All right? Okay. The plant contains, now why is it so toxic and so potent? Because the marijuana plant or the cannabis plant contains this chemical, which is THC. This is the short name for tetrahydrocannabinol. All right, that is what it is. THC is in the cannabis plant, and it's mostly depending on where you take it from. The THC concentrations are different in the plant. All right, so it depends where you take it from. So marijuana, the THC is found in the leaves and the flowering parts of the marijuana plant. Now hashish, again, is from the same family. It is made by compressing the flower buds of the marijuana plants, and hashish is illegal. And why is it made? By crushing the flowering plant buds, is because the THC content is higher in the buds. It contains the highest amount of THC. So marijuana is also called by many other names: cannabis, grass, hashish, joint, pot, leaf, or weed. I'm only giving you the details because of the work that you'll be doing. You'll be going out and meeting people who maybe are drug addicts. So therefore, it is important that you know the differences under the categories. Right, let's move on to the last one then. Let's move into hallucinogens. This is the last main category. Again, as I said, for simplicity's sake, I'm just bringing it down to 4. Hallucinogens, these are also known as psychedelics because of the effect that they have. They alter your moods. This is the most popular amongst partygoers, amongst the youth, especially when they're affluent. They will go to parties and have rave parties all night, dancing away to music and dazed, completely dazed because they're having their own trip inside their head. And this is one of the most dangerous drugs because it is so potent, and most importantly, so addictive. Let's just have a look. This alters the user's perception of reality. It results in auditory and visual hallucinations. Okay, so this is psychedelic, it's hallucinations. And this is known as tripping. So when you see things from you think they're real, it's a distorted sense of reality. Of course they're not real, but because of the drug, you believe it to be real, and this is known as tripping. Okay, so these are again the parlance they use. The most commonly used hallucinogens are LSD, which you must have all heard from. Magic mushrooms are this, all they come in the pill form. Cannabis, marijuana, MDMA, or ecstasy, that's what it's known as. You may have heard of these names. They are all coming under hallucinogens. Right, so that's that. We do have a few more. I'm just going to briefly cover them. Inhalers, you've all seen this. This is the most common street drug for the underprivileged, for the children who are, and very young as well. Very young as well. Inhalants aren't classified. Now, inhalants are not exactly classified as depressant stimulants or any other type of drug. This is the only category which is prevalent amongst children. Some 1.17% of children consume inhalants compared to 0.58% of adults. So it's easily attainable, and children, you must have all seen children inhaling from plastic bags. Inhalant users inhale vapor or aerosol propellant gases using plastic bags held over the mouth, or by breathing from a solvent-soaked rag or an open container. So the practices are known colloquially as sniffing, huffing, or bagging. So again, easily accessible. I don't think it's as easy now to get dendrite as it used to be, but yes, this is definitely something that we need to be aware about. Steroids, funnily enough, are also illegal, especially anabolic steroids. These are synthetic drugs that resemble natural hormones that are made in the body, and anabolic androgenic steroids, which copy the effects of the male hormone testosterone. People use these to build muscle and increase strength. They are also illegal. Finally, we have club drugs. These are synthetic drugs that are used at nightclubs, bars, and these are the kinds of drugs that you've already understood. I've already gone through them already. So, now that we've had a little background on them, let's see how well you were listening. Okay, I'm going to ask you questions. Do shout out the answers. Let's do this side of the class versus this side of the class. Okay, let's just, because I'm a counsellor. I've been counselling for almost 20 years now. And I've delivered maybe over hundreds of lectures. I've always realized in order to deliver a successful session, you have to have lighter periods in between. You can't just keep talking heavy, because after half an hour to 20 minutes, the human brain shuts off. It doesn't focus as much. So the part after the quiz is so important also. So I need your full attention for the part after the quiz. So therefore, I put in a light section, just a quiz, so that it will lighten up your mind before you go into the heavier section. By the way, as I said, I'm a counsellor and a psychologist. I'm also a hypnotherapist. I do a practice hypnotherapy in my practice. Don't worry, I have not hypnotized any of you at all. But yes, I do practice it, and it helps a lot to delve into the subconscious mind and just unlock any pent-up memories that are causing you pain or grief, and we can remove them quite easily through a session. But more about that later. If you ask, I will leave some time for questions. You're more than welcome to ask me if you want later on. Okay, so let's see for this side of the class, which is the most common depressant? Yes, I heard alcohol. Well done, you were listening. 1 point to them. Let's see whether you can keep up. Let's try again. What drug classification causes you to hallucinate? Come on, you should know. Not opium. Which classification of drug? There were only 4. Of course, Father Lucas. Who's listening more than you? All right. Yes, 1-1. Here we go. Now you think they're easy. Let's see. What are non-synthetic drugs made from opium known as non-synthetic? Remember I told you there were 2 divisions? Opioids. Well done. Oh, opiates are the non-synthetic. Did you say opiates? Yes, you did. 1 point, 2 points to you now. Which drug classification falls into the downers? Depressants. Well done. 2 points, 2 points. Next one. Number 5. To which classification does cocaine fall into? Cocaine. Yes, stimulants. Wow, Father, thank you, Father Victor. Next one, we have 2 points each. All right, next one. What is derived from the cannabis plant? What is derived from the cannabis plant? Marijuana. Yes, well done. 3 points. Number 6. What is the primary purpose of morphine when used medically? Absolutely, sir. Thank you. Pain relief. See, everybody's listening. I'm so happy. Makes me feel so good. Okay, number 7. Name a common hallucinogen drug that is used by partygoers in the pill form. Absolutely. Ecstasy, LSD. Okay. You're also good. I think I'll stop doing a scoring system. Everybody's getting the question right. Opium comes from which plant? This side, please. Absolutely, the poppy plant. What is produced when acetic anhydride is added to the dried morphine base and heating it for 30 minutes? Thank you. Heroin. That is how heroin is made. Right? And acetic anhydride, you will see it in the next section. That is actually coming in from a different part of India. Synthesized in the northeast, sent out to Myanmar, and sent back as heroin back to Assam, back to the northeast. It's shocking how it happens. I will explain it. Now you will understand why the Northeast is the hub of this drug trafficking. It will all make sense. So that's why it was important for me to tell you about the basics of drugs before we move on to the more details, because now everything will make sense. So which drug classification relieves pain? Yeah, morphine, which belongs to classification. The first one. Opioids. Opioids, these narcotics are the pain relieving ones, which is morphine, of which is what? Opiates. What is the difference between cannabis and marijuana? Yes, cannabis refers to the genus of the plant, okay? But marijuana refers to the dry leaves. So if it is in dry form, it is known as marijuana. But if it's in the plant form, then that is cannabis. Which drug classification alters a person's awareness of their surroundings as well as their thoughts and feelings? Yes, hallucinogens. Very good. And number 12, what is hashish? Where is it coming from? How is it? Where does hashish come from? Hashish is a substance, is from the top of where it contains the most potent, remember I said TCP or THP? THC. What is the component of the cannabis? This is the question, I just told the answer. What is the component of the cannabis plant that gives it its potency? The answer is THC, and that's what it's short for. Okay, so this is, and again, it varies throughout the plant, where it is more, where it is less. Name some inhalant drugs, please. Easy. Right. These kinds of things, yes. And almost at the end, what stimulant, this is for this group, which stimulant do cigarettes contain? Nicotine, well done. And finally, which stimulant does coffee contain? Caffeine, yes, correct, it is caffeine. All right, so well done, you did very well. I'm so happy. Congratulations to all of you, because it just goes to show that, thank you for paying attention. I'm so grateful because I've spent the last 2 days refining this in a much easier way to make everyone understand, and to be able to share this knowledge with people who are listening so well. It really gives me a lot of respect. Thank you. Right, now let's move into the drug world. Now that we know the basics, let's quickly move into the drug world. Let's have a look at the world perspective first. The United Nations actually said that approximately 324 million people are using drugs annually, illegal drugs. Okay? And drug abuse and related addiction continue to be a serious public health concern worldwide. We know that. But just have a look at the world. Here we are. Just have a look. Opioids and opiates, all Asia, all here. It's mostly around this area. We are there as well. But on the other side of the world, it's mostly the cannabis and the cocaine type. But we are very much in the opioids and opiates on the right side. I want to show you the three most major trafficking routes. We have one on this side, which is in near Latin America. But we also have two here. One is called the Golden Crescent, which I'm going to cover in a moment, and one is called the Golden Triangle here. Now, the Golden Triangle, which I'll show you, is made up of Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. And between these two areas falls India, and between them both falls the northeast. Now, the problem here is that the Golden Crescent is made up of Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan. They supply almost 90% of the world's opium. Isn't that unbelievable? And if you look at Myanmar, if you look at the Golden Triangle, this is made up of Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. And they, in the northeast hilly terrain, makes it very much easier for the traffickers to smuggle drugs from these areas. So these two areas are here and here. Just have a look. Here we are, and the Golden Triangle on one side, and with the Golden Crescent on the other. Both of these sides work together. It's like a sandwich. We're sandwiched between two golden crescents, one the Golden Crescent and one the Golden Triangle. Very, very hot spots for trafficking. Hot spots for trafficking. Right, so let's quickly have a look now at the India perspective. Consumption of drugs for recreation, such as plant-based drugs, such as cannabis, cocaine, and heroin, to synthetic drugs, has increased manifold in recent years in India. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, illicit drugs were estimated to have killed nearly 7.5 lakh people worldwide in 2017 alone. In terms of users, India's illicit trade markets are mostly dominated by cannabis and opioids. Cannabis in the form of bhang is actually legal in India, but in other forms, marijuana, which is the leaves, the dried form, ganja, and charas, which is hashish. Remember, hashish is taken from the plants, from the flowering plants, from the buds there. They are actually illegal. So nearly 3.1 crore people in India are estimated to be cannabis users, according to the AIMS report. Let's just have a look here at a map. Of them, 1.3, that's 100% of the population, use ganja and charas, while the rest consume bhang. If we just have a look here, this is high on drugs. This is a world estimation. Opioids use in India is higher than the global average. See here, the world is opioid. In India, it is 2.06 here, and this is higher than the others. If you just have a look, so this is the highest there. So yes, we do have a problem because the world is 3.9. India is just behind there. India has the highest opioid user there, the yellow one, which is really high, opioids. So we are consumed by these drugs. If we have a look at the charas and the ganja consumptions, we have, again, look at the northeast here. We have a higher prevalence than the rest of the country. The highest is here. In fact, if you have a look at all the other ones, you'll see that Assam and the northeast is is higher in everything than the others. The heroin addiction, according to a government report, India had 2.3 crore opioid users in 2018, a 5-point jump in 14 years, a 5-fold jump in 14 years, incredibly high. Opioids are sold as opium, heroin, and pharmaceutical opioids. Let's have a look at the opioid consumption, state-wise now. You just see here, look at the northeast. We're absolutely in the purple, the highest in India, the highest than in the rest of India, which is really high. The scale of substance abuse in India, it's obviously alcohol first, but then after that, bhang is pretty high. Look at the first opioid, it is heroin. Heroin is there, and it's right up there with 12.5. It goes down to cocaine is a little less, but heroin obviously is the highest. Opium is also high. Right, now let's come to the Northeast. Northeast is important because we live here, and therefore we are likely to come across more users, especially people who are in this line. We are likely to come across more users than others. In terms of population percentage, the northeastern states top the list in opioid consumption. We just have a look here, the northeastern states, just have a look. This is India, the other states, and this is the northeastern states. We are highest in all of these. Alcohol, we top it all in every category. We are percentage of adults consuming these substances are the highest in all the categories. According to the AIMS report, northeastern states like Manipur, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim featured in the top 10 list of states of drug abuse. So why is the prevalence so high in the northeast? So let's now see, I think everything will make sense to you. We have close proximity to the two largest illicit drug trafficking regions, as I already said. On the left was known as the Golden Crescent, and on the right was known as the Golden Triangle. You have a look, the Golden Crescent in the west and the Golden Triangle in the east. Can you see it again? These two regions account for more than 90% of the world's main opium heroin production. Just these two regions. Mr. Gwig from the intelligence officer from the zonal of NCB zonal, Guwahati, he said this in an international conference. He said India is the largest manufacturer and exporter of precursor chemicals. This is when we talked about synthetics. These are made together to give you the opiates. So I mean the opioids. So acetic anhydride. Acetic anhydride is a constituent of what do we mix acetic anhydride plus morphine to give heroin. So acetic anhydride is a subcomponent which is required to make heroin. It comes from the other parts of India, and they are manufacture of narcotics. So if you see, India is sandwiched between a precursor, chemical supplying country and the drug producing Golden Triangle. So from here, all the chemicals are coming in, and they're made here, and then come back into Assam again, or the northeast. So it's a racket. It goes in and out, back to where we started. That is the greatest irony. We have a look, there we are. We get it in and coming out. So chemicals are smuggled from mainland India to the northeast, then onwards towards Myanmar. These chemicals are then processed to be making heroin and all of that, and they're pushed back into the northeast and then to the other parts of India. So we are the hub of drugs. We are the hub of drugs. These are the most important. Moreh, Champhai and Guwahati are the nucleus of the drug trafficking industry in the northeast. We just have a look at the drug trafficking routes. These are the main routes. You can see out of Manipur they come. And these are the main drug trafficking routes. A lot of the terrain is hilly, and therefore aerial viewing cannot be seen. It's very hard to detect how they're traveling through. Nevertheless, there have been many seizures in the past, but it is very much a concern. So now that we all know about drugs and why so many youths in the northeast are exposed to psychoactive drugs, how can we protect the youths at risk, YAR, from the dangers of drug taking and addiction? So now that we know the basics, and how do we fit into this? How can we all fit into it? This is now the main focus of the presentation. Let's have a look first why people start taking drugs in the first place. Usually out of curiosity. Curiosity is the top, the most highest one. Curiosity, happiness, experience seeking, and it goes down, down. But curiosity is the highest. The boy that I'm writing the book on, the man now, he started from curiosity. In fact, this boy was addicted for so long that he lost everything. He lost everything. He started selling his mother's jewelry. And slowly, when the mother didn't realize, he would open her Godrej and take out jewelry, sell it, and put the money in his shoe and go straight to the traffickers where they were selling. Eventually, one day, his mother had locked the cupboard. He had no way of getting money. So you know what he did? The mother was just eating her breakfast. He walked up to her, grabbed her chain and walked out. And that chain had been with her since she was a child. And later on, after the mother died, he was still high when he was doing the final rites. And then he got married, but he couldn't sustain the marriage. Eventually, he ended up injecting, trying to get money from wherever he could. He did give up, but then he turned into alcoholic. He became an alcoholic, and he lived at the Guwahati railway station for 6 months, sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the Times of India, he told me. He slept on the Times of India because it was the biggest newspaper compared to the others. After he finished reading it, he would sleep on it every night. His body was covered in lice. His hair was covered in lice. He kept his shoes on 24/7, and once every 7 days, he would peel off his socks. Remember what I said? Peel off his socks, because they would be stuck to his feet, and he would peel off his socks, buy another pair for 10 rupees, and put on another pair of socks. He turned to his friends for goodwill, any little amount of money he could get, and he knew where the cheapest places to buy the cheapest food or go without. But he never went out without his alcohol. He was always drunk in some form. Anyway, I'm going to show you a photograph of him at the end, and I'll tell you the end of his story at the end. So these are the 6 stages of addiction. Just have a look at it. It's so interesting how the demons of addiction grab you and you don't even realize. It is really very, very scary how addiction can make even the strongest people break, fall down. Never underestimate the power of addiction, because even counselors like myself cannot handle addiction counseling. We're not specialized in it, so we have to send people forward for a rehabilitation. Right, the first-time users are usually doing it through curiosity, boredom, or peer pressure. In the case of the book I'm writing, curiosity and peer pressure. Right, stage 2 is called experimentation. What happens here is a substance is used socially, but it is kept under control. It's usually used in social settings. It can be alcohol as well. And there are no cravings as such, on and off. You use it now and again, on and off. Experimentation. Okay, nobody is at this stage addicted as such, but it is slowly getting there. Let's see what stage 3 is. Stage 3 now is regular use. At this point, you are using it on a regular pattern. Interestingly, when I say pattern, it may not mean every day. It may not mean every week. It may mean every 2 weeks. The craving is a cycle. So it disperses and then it comes up again. It may be monthly. It doesn't matter. Just notice if it is a regular cycle. If it is, then it falls into the stage 3 of addiction. Slowly now, negative consequences are beginning to happen. Family are beginning to understand that this person is addicted. There may be ugly fights. There may be big scenes. This is stage 3. Stage 4 is now dependency. Dependency happens when now tolerance is developed. So now what happens? You need more. You need more of the drug in order to get the same high. So therefore, your physical dependency starts, and along with that, withdrawal symptoms. If you don't take it on time, you will start experiencing withdrawal symptoms. Whichever drug it is, they have different withdrawal symptoms. And of course, it varies from person to person. Nobody is going to have the same withdrawal symptom. And remember, we're talking about a world that is not so black and white. It's grey. You know, sometimes some people may experience things differently to others. Some drugs may have a different consequence from one person to another. So it's very difficult to actually pinpoint exactly. It's not a black and white world. So withdrawal symptoms will begin in this stage, stage 4. Now you will have a problem. This is now where the problem is very severe. Now stage 5 is now addiction. This is where you are psychologically and physically addicted to the substance. These people are unable to quit. They don't care anymore about what other people say. Negative consequences are no longer a deterrent. You know, you can't threaten an addict. They don't know morals. They don't understand. They don't understand what is a lie. Because all they need is their fix. All they need is an instinctive need for it. It's a desperate, desperate need. And getting high now is their top priority. Seiju used to tell me, he used to brush before he even brushed his teeth, he would have to have a fix. Then only he would brush his teeth. Because without getting the fix, he couldn't function. And finally, number 6 is treatment. Getting treatment is the final stage and involves making a choice to end the cycle of addiction. Treatment can include counselling, group therapy, family therapy, detox. These will what rehabilitation centres will do, and therefore I haven't actually given any one or two specific names at the end. It's up to you to find out what suits you, and according to your budget as well. So there are many good ones in the northeast and also in the rest of India. So depending on what suits you, that will be the one that you could choose. So how do we identify those most at risk? This is where you will come in. How can you identify the students or those youth that are most at risk? We have something called the CAGE Assessment Questionnaire. This is very important because this is used universally. It is a personal assessment for alcohol and substance abuse. And it is simply a preliminary assessment. It's not a formal diagnosis. It gives you an idea or an inkling. And it is done before you send it to a doctor. You can do this assessment by yourself. It was first developed to show people if they have an alcohol abuse problem, but then it is now moved on, it's been adapted to identify the dependency on drugs. Therefore now it is known as the CAGE 8. It is used to identify a problem specifically with drug abuse. Okay, CAGE 8. I'll show you the questions that you should ask for this CAGE 8. Occasional drug users who use the questionnaire won't receive accurate results. If you're using it occasionally, you won't get accurate results. But if you are a lifelong user or using it as an addict, then you will definitely get possible results. The questions represented by the CAGE acronym are these. These are the 4 questions you need to ask. The first one is C, CAGE. Have you ever felt you should cut down on your substance? Have you ever felt you should cut down? If the answer there is yes, at least there could be. Next one. Have people annoyed you by criticizing your substance abuse? Those of you who have met, obviously you've all been meeting addicts and interacted with addicts, they get very angry if you ask them about their substance abuse. There's a very specialized way of counseling people. And as Father Guwahati said in his first speech, he said, you've got to be kind. You've got to be kind, you've got to be soft with people. There's no point coming on rough, otherwise they will close up. So therefore we need a special kind of counseling when it comes to those who are wounded, and we do need to approach with care. Number 3 is the G. This is, have you ever felt bad or guilty about your substance abuse? And finally 4, have you ever used a substance first thing in the morning to steady your nerves or start the day? And this is an eye opener, is E. So these are the 4 questions that you would ask. This is known as the CAGE questionnaire. It's basically a very simple questionnaire to have an idea of whether this person could be addicted, because it's very difficult to actually tell sometimes from the surface. So 1 or more yes responses is regarded as a positive screening test, indicating possible substance use and need for further evaluation. So how to help youths at risk? So this is where our contribution is invaluable to the community. Our contribution and all of your contribution is invaluable. You will never understand or never underestimate the power of the mind and how we can give to others in the form of counseling, in the form of support, in the form of encouragement. It is invaluable. And if we are members of the society who are respected, who have a very strong mission, then you will definitely be able to change people's mindsets. It's one of the most powerful things to do in life, to be able to make someone come out of a negative cycle. It gives you instant gratification. And I feel, personally speaking from my journey in counseling, I tell my children that even if I die counseling, I will go straight to heaven, because I have died doing something I love so much. That's what I tell them. All right, let's have a look at the first one, intervention. Intervention is done directly with the doctors. It's psychotherapy. They will develop healthier patterns of thinking. Medication as well, people who are addicted. All we can do at this stage is refer, because the intervention will be definitely to get help. Remember, God helps those who help themselves. You can't just sit there and say, God, I'm an addict, help me. He'll never help you. But if you say, help me to go to someplace and give me the mental strength, to find help for myself, then He will help guide you as you go on in your journey. So God helps those who helps themselves. Medication, positive behavioral therapy, building coping skills, hospitalization to detox before long-term treatment, and support groups. This is where we all come in. Peer groups, resources, and accountability. I believe people like yourselves are the glue of a community that put together the parents, the addicts, the community helpers, the doctors, the teachers, all together. We combine all the energies from everyone to uplift the youth at risk. Now, prevention. Prevention is the critical area where we need to be mostly connected. The prevention of preventing early use of drugs or alcohol may go a long way in reducing risks of becoming addicted. A word about risk and protective factors. I hope you still have enough energy to hear me out. Risk and protect. I need to mention this because if you have a risk factor, you need to counterbalance it with a protective factor. Then that child will not go under. So, for example, if you have a very, very negative home climate at home, then that child is at risk. That's a risk factor. But if you can balance it with a strong community support, or you can balance it with family counseling, or you can balance it by making the child aware or telling the parents your toxicity at home is hampering your child, then you have balanced it with a protective factor. In that case, the child won't go down. So it all depends on protective factors versus risk factors. Protective factors are those characteristics that will have a lower likelihood of negative outcomes, and risk factors are those that are associated with a higher likelihood of negative outcomes. We always make sure the protective factors are more than the risk factors. In that case, the child will not go under. Okay, therefore not everybody who experiences a risk factor will be using drugs or alcohol. The greatest risk factors for teenage abuse are these. Top 5. Number 1, environment. Environment. Being around family or friends or a peer group that normalize the use of drugs, that will make a teen think that using drugs is not a big deal. They lose the perspective of drug taking. They don't see it as a big deal, whether it is alcohol or whether it is heroin. It's okay, so-and-so took it. It's all right now and again. Don't minimalize. Once we start to have an environment where we minimize the use of drugs, we are actually putting the student or the child on the very wrong path. These types of situations also make accessing controlled drugs easier. Number 2, family history. Yes, family history. Substance abuse does have a genetic component. 1 in 4 people are more likely, 25% more likelihood of an addict giving birth to a person who is more predisposed to an addiction of some sort. 25% more chance. So therefore, teens with immediate or even extended family members that have substance abuse problems are more likely to develop addictions themselves. It's absolutely true. They're growing up in an environment as well. So therefore, genetic factor is also. So first things you need to ask is there an addict in your family? It doesn't have to be the same addict. It could be even alcohol. That is also an addiction. Number 3, the age. Age is critical. If the person is young, they build a greater tolerance. Therefore, they're more likely to be an addict. So the younger teenagers can build a tolerance to substances more easily than the older ones. So their developing brains learn to function with the drug. So you're taking the drug, the brain is still developing, it's okay. It learns to function with the drug. And therefore, teenage brains are still developing, which means the younger they are when they first use drugs, the more likely they are to become an addict. So another question you need to ask is, when did you first start? Family history, when did you first start? The younger they are, the more likelihood they have of becoming addicts. Mental behavioral. Teens that have clinical problems with regulating their emotions are more at risk, especially people who have mental health issues. If they have a mental health issue, they require counseling or something like that, it's a higher chance of becoming an addict as well. And finally, number 5, trauma. Any child that has gone through a traumatic experience, they are more vulnerable. In the case of Seju, his father died and therefore he was very vulnerable. And his father died very sadly, in fact, through an accident, and therefore he also started. They may attempt to drown out their feelings through substance abuse. Remember, substance abuse is escapist, is an escapist thing. You use drugs to get away from life when it is too hard for you to handle. And of course, as you all know, that's not the way. Escaping is not the way to handle it. So the goal in prevention is reducing risk factors and strengthening protective factors. Just finishing off now. This is the most important part now that we know all the background, building resilience. How can we as a community help? How can we as a community help? The community can help in these 8 ways. The first one, community can build strong bonds within the family, the school, and the community. We're in a very, very powerful position by being in touch with so many agencies and organizations, schools as well. So definitely we need to be able to build the bonding between. We have to provide the network, the foundation upon which the group, upon which the youths can start to build. Just thinking. I would love to put this up on my Instagram page. Right, number 2, instilling spirituality. We cannot overlook the importance of spirituality in the recovery process. Now, I don't mean religion, I'm talking about the belief in a higher divine intervention. Spirituality is such an important aspect in all of us, where we believe that we are being guided, that somebody is looking after us, that the world is a good place, that there is a higher energy that will guide us in the right direction. So this is called spirituality. It's important that all of us are able to instill this in the youth, because they may feel that they don't believe anymore. So this is important. Right, number 3, building self-confidence. One of our fathers just before me was mentioning this. Building high self-esteem and coping skills. Crucial. It's absolutely crucial. Nowadays what happens? You have a small negative thing in life and the child will start crying and can't cope. We must build resilience. We must build emotional intelligence in our children. They must be able to handle challenges in life. Otherwise, how will they handle problems that happen to them? So we have to build coping skills. We need to do that. We inculcate these skills in our students. These are acquired skills. You know, I had a student who lost her mother during her class 12 boards. It was very sad, very, very sad. She lost her mother before she finished her exams. And I thought, oh my God, she's going to fail now. It is going to be a disaster. She was a science student of class 12. But miraculously, and this is why I always say, I learn every day from my students. I learn every day from society. I'm constantly learning. This girl came up with 97% in her 12 boards. She topped the school. I was working in another school. I called her to me and I said, how? Why? How did this happen? Your mother died mother went in with something, a very bad stomachache. She was diagnosed with septicemia and she died within 3 days. And the girl said to me, and these words I will remember forever. She said to me, she said, when God took my mother away, He took away the physical body, but He didn't take away the dreams that she has for me and the dreams that I have for myself. Those dreams my mother put in me. And just because our physical body is not here, because our time was done, our time was up, God decided to take her from me. It's okay. But you know what? The dreams are not gone. The dreams are more reinforced now that she's not here. And because she's not here, I will try. I've got goosebumps telling you this. I will try my hardest to do what she wanted for me. And that's why I did that. So she looked at the entire scenario of losing her mother, not as one of a downfall, of a negative life lesson, but as a positive life lesson. She turned it into something positive, and now she's a gynecologist. She sends me photographs of little babies that she delivers. She's a gynecologist and she's a doctor. Isn't that wonderful? So therefore, anything you can overcome. Time heals. Time heals. If you believe it, the only constant in life is change. Right, parent involvement. You need to call in the family members. You can organize parent education workshops if you're, and all of you are in a position of authority and power and responsibility. You can have classroom participation. You can go and visit them at home and inculcate the importance of why they need the support of the parents as well. Very often they're from broken families, by the way, so therefore it may not be so easy, but you can also assume a parent role model. You don't have to be biologically their parents. You can assume a role model, which is sometimes even more powerful than being a real biological mother or a father. Remember that. And when people who are vulnerable are mixing with people who are positive, who are supportive, they can come out much easier from their negative space. Number 5, opportunities for positive social involvement. This is a community project where you can involve them in positive social involvement. That can be any kinds of activities-based things which engages their mind and takes them away from the addicts issues. Number 6, recognition for positive behavior and achievements. Yes, I've done something good. If you give me recognition for that, how am I going to feel? I'm going to feel so much better. You know, I make sure my children tell me thank you after I cooked something nice. Why? Because I want them to appreciate the effort that I've gone to. It makes me feel good, right? And you know, I'm an old lady now, and yet I still need appreciation. I still need someone to tell me, well done, that was very tasty. It makes me feel good. So if it makes me feel good I'm in my fifth decade of life, can you imagine what impact it will have on a broken person, on a person who is struggling with life? Few words of encouragement or giving them something which is tangible that they can look at and be inspired from. That is the feeling they will get, and that will pull them out of negativity. Number 7, clear and consistent expectations from family, school, community about not using drugs. I also have to mention here, being kind all the time is not the answer. Because if you're kind, you may be submissive. You also need to be disciplined. You also need to scold where it is necessary. Which is why parents who bring up children who feel that they've given the children the best in life, those kids end up to be the most spoiled, the most entitled. Why? Because the parents did everything for them and the child didn't have any idea of how to do things for themselves. So therefore they lost themselves. And number 8, promoting sports, activities, physical activities. It's so important to engage children. Iceland did this. They were able to radically cut down smoking, drinking and drug use amongst teens. Because when you have no activity, then you will be socially isolated, you have increased stress, you will have low resilience, you will have poor mental health and physical health, you will have sedentary behaviors and all of these things. So definitely physical activity, sports, dance, organized workshops, it will help people come out. So that brings us to the end. There are a lot of drug rehabilitation centers in Northeast India. About 80% of patients report benefiting from improved quality of life after completing a drug and a alcohol rehabilitation program. They often are quite long, maybe 3 months to 6 months. There are many good centers in the Northeast, but please look up, just type down drug rehabilitation centers in Northeast India in the Google toolbar, and there's a whole lot, over hundreds. So have a look at what suits the person's needs. It's very difficult to just give you 1 or 2. And do always check them out as well. Remember the boy I was telling you about? The 16-year-old? This is him. His name is Seju. He also has a rehab in Guwahati right now. This is one of the excerpts he told me. I want people to understand how drugs can hamper one's life. My story can happen to anyone, he says. When people hit rock bottom, they have a choice. Either they die or they boomerang back. I chose to boomerang back. It's absolutely true. That's what he did. He said, I chose life, not drugs. And in fact, today's session is called Choose Life, Not Drugs. I think that we've reached the end now. Say yes to life and no to drugs. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.